So like you said, you grew up listening to like a bit of everything, which is obviously I think evident in like kind of music that you've been putting out. But I don't know about your environment where you kind of grew up in, but growing up, like there weren't like a ton of like, I guess, black guitarists or like black people like listening to like all these different genres and sounds and like artists like you were listening. Like, did you kind of like notice that yourself when you're coming up and you kind of like found your own lane, or like how'd that happen like with your influences around you?
Yeah, it wasn't until I really started playing that I noticed that. I mean, Kansas is very much so predominantly white. And so, growing up, you kind of view everybody as friends. And then you start to realize, that you don't see a lot of people like you around. And especially once I got more into alternative music, there aren't a lot of black guitar players. But I mean, some to note that are in, rock and metal and all the space that are heroes. There's an older guy named Greg Howe, who's like one of the forefathers of this technique called legato. And, there's like in the modern era dudes like Tosin Abasi. And then I started learning about guitar players like Paul Jackson Jr., who played on like all of Michael Jackson's stuff and tons of just session work. And even outside of guitar, like there's this bass player named Nathan East. He played on a lot of Phil Collins stuff, and he plays bass for like Eric Clapton. So it was when I got older, I started to realize that outside of just R&B music, there was still a lot of Black musicians doing stuff. But growing up, I definitely was wondering like, hey, like every band I listened to, is all white. But then, of course, my mom introducing me to R&B. You're kind of like, that's when you start to notice like, oh, wait, there's differences happening in the color of people that do a certain kind of thing. So, I saw that pretty early on, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been interesting to watch over the years and kind of how that's changed and evolved and ebbed and flowed. But I think, especially nowadays, like I'm seeing way more like Black artists and like indie rock and like all these alternative sounds. Obviously, you have like people like Thundercat, and you have others. So another guy I know called Mags. Like, so, I mean, it is pretty interesting to see, and I'm actually kind of excited to see it. It's kind of like delving into these other areas of sound and music and like bring your own like flair and flavor to it. So, I mean, is there like, I don't know what to ask. I don't want to phrase this. So, like, is there any type of, I don't know, expectations or like when you're creating or when you're like introducing yourself to the people in your sound, like, are there like any expectations that comes when you're like meeting new people and like these new artists?
Yes and no. I think it just depends on what people know me for and what they think I'm coming in to do.
Yeah.
Because those things vastly kind of change, I guess, the context of how I'm being received. So for people who have gotten to experience, I guess, the fullness of my musicality, they're usually generally like, oh, Justus, just do your thing. Of course, going into sessions with bigger artists, or, when I'm playing guitar for other artists, people just know the version of you that they've met. And so if they haven't experienced my own music as an artist and kind of my own stuff, it's definitely like not even an awkward phase, but it is kind of like that phase of like, they have no clue what I actually do.
Idea. Yeah.
They're doing whatever you're doing. And then it happens on the flip side. I mean, like, as I'm putting music out and people are discovering my music, you see the comments and like, holy crap, I just found out you did this or you did that. And, so it's kind of happening going both ways. I think people, like the more you find out about me, like the less you really know what to expect next, with me. Yeah. So it's kind of fun.